Chapter 1. I became Batman's teacher. In Gotham City, on a not-so-bright but still warm morning, Schiller put down his coffee cup and heard the clicking of his colleague Anna's high heels. Soon, a blonde U.S. sweetheart walked in with a dark expression and said, "Those damn lazy bums at the new student registration office took the day off. You go fill in for a day." Schiller said, "I'll go right away. This coffee is on you. You'll never get to flirt with me." Anna roared, but Schiller happily walked out of the cafe with his coffee, glanced at Gotham City's perpetually cloudy sky, and began his 5th day there. In his previous life, Schiller was a psychologist. After a plane crash, he was thrown into the city with a damnably simple folk custom. Fortunately, he was neither a hero nor a villain, but a leisurely and stable university teacher, and it was his old profession, professor of psychology. Just as Schiller was happily anticipating another day of slacking off, the system in his mind chimed, displaying, "Peter Parker has sent a chat request." As Schiller walked towards the registration office, he replied in his mind, "What's up, Peter? Hey, I'm going to intern at Osborne tomorrow. You don't know how rare this opportunity is for me. And Gwen, she's going too, and we'll be together. It's awesome. We can discuss genome helicases, those awesome big machines." Schiller silently thought to himself, "No girl wants to discuss that with you, little spider. Snap out of it." Ever since he arrived here, Schiller had gained a U.S. comic chat system. The first person he unlocked was little spider Peter Parker. This chatterbox had been rambling to him for 4.5 days about how much he liked Gwen, wanted to pursue her, but was too afraid. The typical adolescent emotional journey. While encouraging Peter, Schiller arrived at the registration office. He sat down to organize the forms, waiting for the new students to report. However, it was strange. Schiller had been here for so many days, but he hadn't seen the Batman signal light up, nor had any villains caused trouble. Life was so peaceful, as if the local customs were truly simple. Soon, students began to arrive one after another, carrying piles of materials. What Schiller had to do was register their names and dorm rooms. "Next!" Schiller shouted without lifting his head. A whole line had already formed in front of him. A boy sat down, and Schiller asked, "Name?" "Bruce Wayne." "Bruce, male dormitory building 2, room 306. Schiller wrote it down to himself. Then suddenly his pen tip paused. He subtly looked up and scrutinized the boy, who had blue eyes and black hair and was very handsome. Schiller said, "Wayne. Indeed, I am Wayne." Schiller repeated, "Male dormitory building 2, room 306. Didn't you hear clearly? Take the form and leave quickly. Everyone behind you is waiting." This time it was Bruce's turn to be stunned. He picked up the form and asked, "Which department are you a professor in?" "Psychology." "Don't take my class, kid," Schiller said. Bruce was intrigued by him, but Schiller was helpless. So Batman had just started college. No wonder there was no Batman signal. Why was he so unlucky? Batman was going to college, and he transmigrated to become a college teacher. Schiller had a very clear understanding of the danger level of the Batman series, especially this 18-year-old brat Bruce, a despicable playboy. Bruce said nothing. He picked up the form, thanked him, and left. After finishing the new student registration work, Schiller was about to go back to the professor's apartment to sleep when he suddenly remembered he'd left his keys in the office. As he went up the office stairs, he ran into a tall, thin professor. Schiller said, "Hi, Jonathan. Are you also here to get something?" "Yes. Did you forget your keys in the office again?" "Oh, right. Anna rushed me too much today, so I forgot when I left. I'll be right down after I get them. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." The instant Schiller and Jonathan passed each other, a chilling coldness crept up his spine. Jonathan Crane, the supervillain Scarecrow. Jonathan, with his back to Schiller, didn't see Schiller turn around and stare intently at him. If he hadn't learned today that Batman had just started college, he wouldn't have remembered. Memories of Scarecrow flooded his mind. Gotham University psychology professor, doctor of psychology and chemistry, the future Scarecrow who would use fear toxin for carnage, Jonathan Crane. Schiller took a deep breath and continued upstairs with an unchanged pace. The current Jonathan was not yet Scarecrow, because Bruce was only 18 and hadn't graduated from college, so he hadn't become Batman yet. Jonathan wasn't a world-renowned psychologist either. He was only slightly famous within the academic field of emotional psychology. Schiller was even more famous than him now. Schiller was now a world-class master of criminal psychology and abnormal psychology, a renowned psychological researcher, and Gotham's most famous psychology professor. Therefore, Jonathan's attitude just now was quite good. But what was the use of that? Schiller couldn't develop toxins. He was a pure liberal arts student, while Jonathan was also a doctor of chemistry. It really was true. Learn math, physics, and chemistry, and you can go anywhere in the world without fear. Schiller was well aware that Gotham City's grand stage, the bloody curtain, was about to rise. And now he was just a powerless scholar, a weakling who struggled to move a chair, a purely intellectual talent. Let alone encountering these famous supervillains, even the background characters from the comics, those thugs, could easily kill him with a gun. And his worries became reality. Early the next morning, Schiller, who was routinely slacking off at the school's psychology clinic, had just brewed his coffee when he heard a crisp knock on the door. "Professor Schiller, may I come in?" Schiller took a deep breath. This broken psychology clinic actually had students coming. "I'm only here to slack off. Okay? Do you understand paid leave?" Outside the door was Bruce Wayne. Schiller could only grit his teeth and say, "Please sit, student. What psychological problem do you need to consult about? Can't I just come to chat if I don't have a problem?" Wayne spread his hands, revealing his playboy demeanor. Schiller pushed up his glasses. He said, "This is a place for students to receive psychological counseling. If you don't have a problem to consult about, then you can leave." Schiller swore his tone was so dry and perfunctory it was worse than an airplane announcement. But Bruce still asked with interest, "All right, then I'll ask a question. What do you think is the meaning of life?" Schiller took a deep breath and opened the US comic chat system in his mind. He remembered that he had received a random chat opportunity because he had previously guided Peter Parker's relationship problems. He quickly typed in his mind, "A brat whose parents are dead, who swore to take revenge on all criminals, and who disguises himself with a playboy exterior, is now asking me what the meaning of life is. I want him to stop bothering me in the future. How should I answer him? Waiting online, it's urgent." Soon, a reply appeared. "I am a teacher. Regarding your question, I believe you should maintain full patience and provide psychological counseling to this unfortunate child from two aspects." Schiller looked at the chat box name, Charles Xavier, Professor X. No wonder, the founder and headmaster of the X Mansion, truly his old profession. However, Schiller, paying attention to the avatar, noticed that Charles's avatar was clickable. He clicked Charles's avatar in his mind, and a dialog box popped up. First, chat can randomly copy one ability, low level, of the chat object. "Do you want to copy?" Schiller clicked yes without understanding why. Telepathy, low level, loaded. Schiller felt a blur before his eyes, and suddenly countless noise came. Countless unfamiliar emotions rushed into his mind, making him unable to distinguish them. After adapting for a while, Schiller realized that he had indeed gained a part of Professor X's ability. Telepathy was Charles's signature skill. With a brainwave amplifier, he could even brainwash all of humanity, but Schiller only obtained an extremely weakened version. He could only vaguely sense the other person's emotions and some thoughts that suddenly flashed in their mind, unable to directly and clearly read minds. However, this was enough. Schiller focused his attention on Bruce and found that his emotions were very chaotic now. Yes, he wasn't as cynical as he appeared. According to Batman's life experience, he should have just returned from his studies abroad and entered university only to maintain Bruce's identity disguise. The real Batman already deeply hated this utterly boring daily life. Every drop of his blood was screaming revenge. Revenge on those criminals. In Bruce's eyes, the professor opposite him suddenly seemed to fall into a quiet contemplation. Schiller had a pair of slightly unusual gray eyes. When Bruce was stared at by these eyes, his keen intuition began to sound an alarm. He seemed to be being spied upon, seen through. Then, Schiller said, "Perhaps you have been waiting for someone to give you this answer, a definitive answer. If you have more things to do after getting this answer and won't bother me again, then I am willing to give you this answer." "Oh, what is it?" "Revenge," Schiller said, staring into Bruce's eyes. Under Bruce's suddenly dark expression, he stared directly at him and repeated, "The meaning of life is revenge." Ignoring Bruce's face, which had turned as gloomy as the Gotham sky, Schiller said, "Are you satisfied, Mr. Wayne?" Chapter 2: Another Crossing. If Schiller were to do a psychological profile of Batman in the comics, his greatest trait would not be caution, wisdom, or strategic planning, but suspicion. Batman never fully trusts anyone. His spirit of skepticism has become a school of its own. Skepticism and conspiracy theories are ingrained in his bones. He is as intelligent as he is suspicious. Schiller's answer clearly plunged this young Batman into extreme doubt. Bruce had never thought that anyone could see through his heart. He had great confidence in his disguise. Even old butler Alfred, who had raised him since childhood, he felt only understood a part of him, not the whole. But this professor, this refined psychology professor who looked completely like an ordinary person, gave him the most unlikely answer, yet also the most accurate and incisive one. It was not until the moment he received this answer that the surge in fervor within Bruce told him he had indeed been waiting for someone to give him this answer. It was time to begin his revenge. However, compared to the answer itself, the person who gave it made his newly ignited vengeful blood feel as if a basin of cold water had been poured over it. Bruce did not believe, never believed, that anyone could, purely through psychology, see the hidden devils in his heart, that group of shadowy Batman. Schiller, however, said, "Consultation time is up. I have to go to class now. Goodbye, Mr. Wayne." Schiller believed Bruce would definitely be conflicted for a long time. If he figured it out and quickly transformed into Batman to uphold justice, then he shouldn't be in class. What else does Bruce have to learn? Why does he have to make trouble for these diligent faculty members? Schiller felt he would most likely figure it out, and then those gangs and criminal organizations would be enough to give him a headache. That way, Schiller could happily slack off with pay at school, and at worst, fly to Hawaii for vacation. Schiller had a good reputation at school because of his great name, but that was all the original owner's resume. Schiller adhered to the principle of do as much as you're paid for. He would start lecturing as soon as he sat down in class and disappear the moment the bell rang. After class questions? Non-existent. He had been like this for these 5 days. Fortunately, the original Schiller also seemed quite reclusive and had few friends. His appointment as a professor at Gotham University was only a few months ago, and he wasn't very familiar with the people at school. Therefore, the transmigration Schiller didn't reveal any flaws. During dinner that afternoon, Peter sent a message. "Mr. Schiller, everything is terrible." It was accompanied by a frustrated emoji. Schiller knew that this chat system was not a brain-to-brain communication. Only he used the system while Peter had coincidentally met an online friend, and Charles had received the message while browsing educational forums in his spare time. The system would convert conversations with these characters into a format they could accept. For example, Peter communicated through online social software, and Charles through knowledge-based forums. If it were Thanos, it might be something like a cosmic network signal, so the other party wouldn't feel abrupt, and the system only guaranteed they would answer Schiller's first question. After that, Schiller had to manage the conversation himself, so Schiller's main chat partner now was the young, ignorant, and naive little spider. For an old fox like Charles, Schiller would not easily probe without full confidence. Schiller replied, "What's wrong, Peter? Not going well with Gwen." "Oh, it's certainly not going well, but terrible doesn't refer to that." "Then what is it? You didn't mess up an experiment, did you?" "Sort of. I knocked over a very dangerous-looking experimental apparatus, and a dangerous creature inside escaped. I was also bitten by it." Schiller knew that Spider-Man's fate had been partially altered by chatting with him. Through their conversations, he knew the person on the other side was Spider-Man from the 616 comic main universe. Originally, this high school student should have been bitten while attending an exhibition, but because Peter fell for Gwen, he would constantly confide in Schiller about how charming and lovely his classmate Gwen was. Schiller was greatly annoyed by this chatterbox, so he gave him advice on how to pursue Gwen. Gwen came from a good family and found an internship at Osborn Group during the summer. This originally had nothing to do with Peter, but Schiller advised him to be a bit thick-skinned and apply for the same internship. Peter's grades were excellent and he actually got the internship. As a result, he wasn't bitten by an exhibition spider this time, but directly by a spider from an experimental apparatus at Osborn Group. Anyway, he was destined to be bitten, because Spider-Man was chosen by the Weaver in the Spider Totem. If not today, then tomorrow. He had to take that bite one way or another. Schiller comforted the poor little spider and then went back to sleep. The night in Gotham was deep and thick, perfect for sleeping. Bruce stayed awake all night, looking at the almost shapeless moon in the thick fog, holding a stack of files in his hand. The name on the first page was Schiller Andale Rodriguez. Schiller was completely unaware that he had been thoroughly investigated by Batman. In his deep sleep, he heard a system alarm, but he was too deeply asleep. Unbeknownst to him, a blue light swept across. The system's alarm became more frequent. Schiller still did not wake up. Something seemed to be hindering the system. Finally, after a burst of chaotic sounds, Schiller's figure directly disappeared. Emergency protection system activated. Locating universe. Locating universe. Receiving universe confirmed. Identity information writing. Writing in progress. Writing failed. Writing in progress. Writing successful. Waking up again, Schiller rubbed his eyes, instantly blinded by the sunlight. What the hell, Gotham City actually had a sunny day. He pulled open the curtains. Outside was a sunny, New York City. Unlike Gotham's awful weather, New York was clear and sunny, very bright even in the early morning. Schiller looked out the window and found that he should be in a high-end apartment in downtown New York City. He turned around and saw a messy pile of things on his desk, along with a wine bottle. Under the wine bottle was a work ID. Schiller, New York Presbyterian Hospital psychiatrist, and attending physician? I've transmigrated again. Damn it, Schiller thought. Before he could curse, his phone rang. He picked it up, and a loud voice on the other end said, "Dr. Schiller, where have you been? You absolutely cannot miss today's joint consultation. Are you drunk again? Please come immediately." Schiller's ears hurt from the ringing, but then he remembered he was a doctor now. In such an urgent situation, a patient might be in critical condition. Since he was already here, he had to do the work. Schiller immediately grabbed his credentials, went downstairs to find a car. There was no reason for such a high-end apartment not to have a car. He found a relatively new Mercedes in the downstairs garage that matched his car key. He pressed it and it really opened. Thanks to Schiller's academic exchange in New York in his previous life, he used the car's navigation to reach Elder's Hospital, New York's largest hospital, as quickly as possible. As soon as he entered, the girl at the front desk quickly ran over and said, "Dr. Schiller, please hurry. The joint consultation has already begun." Schiller didn't know what his current persona was, but he just nodded indifferently and went up. Fortunately, someone led the way. Schiller arrived at the conference room. When they saw him, the conference room quieted down for a moment, then continued their discussion. Schiller sat in the seat specially reserved for him, observing quietly. It seemed he should be a famous doctor and among the top few in his department. The people sitting opposite were clearly not from psychiatry. One of the doctors seemed arrogant. He said, "Indeed, it makes sense to let those experts who pretend to be mystics go first," lest he feign madness again and try to grope the nurse on the operating table. Schiller looked at his name tag. Stephen Strange, Dr. Strange. Well, he was in Marvel again. Schiller couldn't be bothered with him. Judging by Strange's appearance, he was still far from his car accident. Right now, he was just an extremely self-serving and annoying jerk, disliked by everyone. Schiller silently read the medical records. Strange, however, found him an eyesore. For no other reason than Schiller clearly had been drinking the day before and was late for the consultation the next day. Strange was a bit of a germaphobe and couldn't stand Schiller's unprofessional attitude. Moreover, he had always felt that all psychologists were charlatans. In short, he thoroughly disliked Schiller. During the meeting, he constantly picked on Schiller, but Schiller just recited from the book and ignored him. After the meeting, Strange even deliberately bumped into him. Schiller was greatly annoyed by him, but he thought that Strange would eventually learn his lesson, and it was probably only a few years until his accident. If he weren't so annoying, Schiller might have reminded him, but now Strange could just go through the plot the hard way himself. As soon as the consultation ended, Schiller opened his phone and received a call. The voice on the other end was very pleasant, but a bit anxious. She asked, "Dr. Schiller, has your consultation ended? Can you come to Stark Tower now? Tony is not doing well." Tony Stark? What time should this be? Was Iron Man kidnapped? Or had he already returned? Schiller didn't even have time to go online and check. The Stark company car had already been dispatched to the hospital's ground floor. He could only quickly get in the car. A beautiful woman with a businesslike demeanor sat in the passenger seat. She said, "Ever since Tony came back, he was like this during the last diagnosis. He started having baseless tantrums and doing crazy things. I heard him crying last night." "Miss Pepper, are you all right?" Schiller asked tentatively. Pepper covered her eyes and said, "I'm sorry, but please be sure to put your heart into this treatment." Schiller understood. This should be after Iron Man was kidnapped and returned. Then he learned that his company's weapons were being used in unjust wars, and he, Schiller, was probably the psychologist Pepper hired out of excessive worry during Stark's psychological struggles. Chapter 3: Stark's expensive psychological. The The Stark Schiller saw was indeed on the verge of madness. His psychological state was a mess, and with his telepathy, even through the wall, Schiller could feel his chaotic and tangled thoughts giving him a headache. Schiller took a deep breath and walked in. Stark looked up, rolled his eyes, and gave Schiller a big white eye. Although he looked a bit haggard, he wasn't disheveled, and the consequence of his stubborn pride was that Schiller could feel he was already on the verge of collapse, but just unwilling to show it in front of Pepper. Schiller cleared his throat. Pepper looked worriedly at Stark, then turned and left. Schiller sat opposite Stark and said, "Mr. Stark, may I ask you a question? What do you want to ask? To play the mystic and talk philosophy with me? Or discuss those useless psychology theories?" "Ahem, neither. I want to ask how much my hourly rate is." Stark was clearly stunned by the question. He said with extreme surprise, "What did you say?" "I said I want to know the price of my psychological consultation, because I was drunk when Miss Pepper discussed the price with me, and I forgot everything when I woke up," Schiller said. Stark was speechless at this moment. He waved his hand and said, "You shouldn't choose an abstract topic, one that you psychologists commonly use, like the meaning of life, the object of sorrow, topics like that. Yes, that's the next step, after the consultation officially begins. But I need to first confirm whether you can afford my psychological consultation fee." Stark's eyes widened. He said in shock, "What did you say? Do you know who I am? Goodness, are you some kind of primitive man? Don't you know me? Don't you recognize this is Stark Tower? Yes, I know you are very rich, Mr. Stark. But how much money you have and how much you are willing to offer are two different things. How much do you want?" $1 million an hour. No bargaining. Take it. Take it. You mercenary mad doctor, are you crazy? $1 million. I could hire a dozen beautiful women on a yacht. I vaguely heard someone say he was very rich. Stark was truly speechless with Schiller. He said, "Did Pepper send you to mess with me? Fine. Go tell her. She succeeded. I've already explained that my last party was just to say goodbye to those ex-girlfriends, not to do anything else. Why doesn't she believe me?" Schiller said, "A dozen beautiful women on a yacht won't make you feel better, sir. Especially when you feel like you're about to die." Stark's exaggerated gestures stopped. He stiffened, then looked back at Schiller, his gaze suspicious. Schiller sat calmly and said, "You are very afraid of death now, but perhaps what frightens you most is not death, but not having the chance to make amends for your mistakes." "Bullshit. Who are you? Who exactly are you?" Stark's emotions began to stir. He said, "Did Pepper tell you something?" "No, she wouldn't know either." "You." Stark stared directly at Schiller. He said, "Don't play these tricks with me. I don't believe there's any damned mind-reading in this world." "There is no mind-reading in the world, only psychology," Schiller said. He stood up and told Stark, "You can continue to procrastinate. Anyway, my consultation fee is $1 million an hour. If we waste a little more time, I can buy a new car." Stark's head hurt from his alternating serious and rambling talk. He said, "How did you figure that out? With that ridiculous psychology?" "That's not important. What's important is that the only advice I can give you is to best solve the problem of death first. Of course, you might think I'm making it sound simple, but the method is." Schiller stopped. Stark stared at him. Schiller said, "Pay 50% deposit first, and then we can begin the next part of the treatment." Stark was practically fuming, smoke coming from his head and steam from his nose. He was so amused by Schiller that he picked up the phone and called Pepper, saying, "My darling, where did you find a vampire doctor?" "Yes, he charged me $1 million an hour." Schiller directly snatched the phone and said, "Miss Pepper, Mr. Stark's unit of calculation for $1 million is one yacht of beautiful women." Then he hung up the phone, shook his phone and said, "It will be in your account in 5 minutes." Stark was still staring at him. Stark crossed his arms and said, "Speak. I want to see what you can say. What have you been avoiding?" What have I been avoiding? You'd best ask yourself. The answer is hidden in here. I'm not referring to Miss Pepper's urgent calls or ex-girlfriend's ambiguous texts. I'm serious." Schiller leaned on the table, arms crossed. He pushed up his glasses and said, "I've never seen such a peculiar case. It's unique, very rare." Stark shivered and said, "Hey, I don't like men. Stay away from me. You are not as absurd as you appear. I know someone very much like you. He disguises himself as a playboy, like a fool who lives for the day and never thinks about tomorrow. But he is very smart, too smart, so he has been waiting for someone to give him an answer. This answer comes from his past. Stark looked at Schiller and Schiller looked at him. Stark whispered, "I'll give you $2 million US. Leave here. I'll tell Pepper your treatment was very effective." If I'm not mistaken, Miss Pepper is listening right now," Schiller said. Stark fell silent. Schiller said, $2 million US, and I'll tell you a truly useful method. Deal. All the answers you seek are in that past you most avoid. I once saw it in the news, the founder of Stark Industries, your father. Enough, Stark said. He turned away. Schiller couldn't see his expression. Stark's voice trembled slightly. He said, "Pepper will transfer the consultation fee to you. Leave here. He would be willing to give you a second life. God bless you. Leave here." After Schiller left, Stark smashed the wine glass on the table. And in the SHIELD office, Nick Fury pressed his earpiece and said, "Immediately investigate a psychologist named Schiller. I want all his information right away." After Schiller left, a large sum of money quickly arrived in his account. He thought happily, although Stark was difficult to deal with now, you get what you pay for, and he was still willing to help this rich man solve his problems. And soon, there was another surprise. Schiller discovered he could replicate Spider-Man's abilities. It turned out that the previous lack of this function wasn't a system malfunction, but because Peter hadn't been bitten yet. Now that his spider abilities had appeared, Schiller could naturally replicate them. Schiller clicked replicate, and he obtained spider sense, low level. Compared to the immediate impact of gaining telepathy, this felt unremarkable. Schiller felt his 5 senses had slightly improved, meaning he could see further and hear more clearly. As for intuition, Schiller hadn't felt it yet. He felt a little regretful. If only he had Little Spider's physique, but it was a weakened version anyway, probably just a slight boost to athletic ability, far from being able to fly or burrow. Spider-Man didn't have such great strength at first. His spider abilities developed gradually. Currently, it seems he's just a bit beyond ordinary people, not too exaggerated. However, since Spider-Man's story had begun, Peter's uncle might also be in trouble. Schiller thought about it and still sent Peter a message. He said, "How are you? Do you want to come to the hospital for a checkup? I'm a doctor. I can introduce you to a reliable trauma doctor." Peter's reply came quickly. He said, "Wow, you're actually a doctor, that's cool. Which hospital do you work at? What kind of doctor are you? Are you an orthopedic doctor? But I don't think I need a surgeon anymore. I'm very happy now. I think Gwen will agree to my pursuit soon." Schiller said, "I advise you to still come for a checkup. Being bitten by an animal is no joke. It's also a good chance for us to meet." Peter clearly hesitated. After all, meeting someone from the internet at this time wasn't a good idea. He had just gained his spider abilities and was extremely excited, not wanting to do anything else. Schiller said, "I think you can bring Miss Gwen along. I'm at Elder's Hospital. I can get you both a free comprehensive physical examination, and afterwards, you can go to the coffee shop nearby." Peter was somewhat tempted. Firstly, his family situation wasn't good, so he didn't have the opportunity for physical examinations, and no New Yorker hadn't heard of Elder's Hospital. He said, "Thank you, but I'd like to bring my uncle and aunt along. They're older. Of course, this might be a bit much. If not, just pretend I didn't say anything." Schiller thought about it and decided it might be even better. He said, "Okay, I'll make an appointment for you this weekend. You can also try inviting Miss Gwen and her family. I have plenty of available slots." Peter joyfully went to call Gwen. You see, he had always received Gwen's help. Because his family was not well off, Gwen always brought him snacks and yogurt. Peter always felt guilty that he couldn't help Gwen much, but this was a good opportunity for compensation. Elder's Hospital was not that easy to get into. Even if Gwen's father was the New York Police Department director, getting an appointment for a comprehensive physical examination would still require a long wait, or might not be possible at all. Peter felt that things had been going incredibly smoothly for him lately. First, he gained superpowers, and the friend he met online turned out to be a doctor at a big hospital, seemingly an attending doctor. Now his uncle and aunt wouldn't think his online chatting was a waste of time. Chapter 4: Welcome to Gotham. When Schiller woke up, he didn't even need to turn over to know he was back in the quaint Gotham City, because the smell of kerosene in the air and the perpetually cloudy sky outside the window told him he was back again. Damn it, and time hadn't moved at all. He turned off his alarm and checked the calendar. It was the day after the night he traveled to Marvel, meaning time in the DC world didn't pass when he was in Marvel. Schiller sighed, momentarily unsure whether the quaint Gotham City was more dangerous or the center of the universe. New York City was more dangerous. To be honest, although New York was more enjoyable, Gotham was always home. At least it hadn't entered universe mode yet, and Schiller couldn't deal with the purple sweet potato monster right now. He got up, dressed, and since Gotham University required professors to wear formal attire for class, Schiller wore a shirt, vest, and suit every day, sometimes changing the suit style or wearing a trench coat. The weather in Gotham in September was quite pleasant, not cold. Perhaps because it was a coastal city, a gentle breeze blew through the city, making it quite warm. As soon as Schiller stepped out, he saw someone he absolutely did not want to see: Bruce Wayne. Schiller turned around to go back inside. Bruce quickly caught up, shouting, "Professor, Professor, I have some psychology questions I'd like to ask you. Can you wait for me?" Schiller cursed under his breath. There were many teachers around the professor's apartment at the moment, so Schiller couldn't just refuse. He could only say, all right, I'm not deaf, Mr. Wayne. Let's go to the psychology counseling room to talk." So the two entered the psychology counseling room. Bruce didn't sit down but instead offered to make coffee. He brought the hot coffee and placed it in front of Schiller. He said, "Schiller Andale Rodriguez, a world-renowned criminal psychologist, holds 4 doctorate degrees in psychology-related fields, participated in the investigation and solving of the famous Yao Chong City Bloody Massacre, Imperial City Red Glove serial murders, and Coast City Underground dismemberment case. And, most importantly, he resigned mid-trial from the Metropolis deputy mayor case 4 months ago and accepted an invitation to teach at Gotham University. Professor Schiller, can you tell me why you came to Gotham?" Schiller's hair stood on end. Good heavens, the original owner's resume could get him directly admitted to Arkham Asylum. Not even Joker could be as crazy as him. You participated in not just one, but a whole string of these terrifying cases. And Bruce was still holding back, wasn't he? Schiller was cursing internally, but his expression remained unchanged. He took a sip of coffee and said, "Gotham is a good place. Is it? The city with the highest crime rate in the United States. That's not important." "Oh, Metropolis doesn't have a high crime rate. Kid, sit down. You think Metropolis is safer than Gotham, right? Isn't it?" "At least not for me," Schiller said. Schiller inherited the original owner's knowledge and abilities, but as for memories, he suspected that before he transmigrated, the original owner had already lost some important memories. At least now, Schiller couldn't recall any details about those terrifying cases. There seemed to be some vague shadows, but he couldn't recall them clearly. Schiller knew that the original owner must have been involved in an unspeakably complex case and then was ambushed. Schiller said, "The safety you see is merely an illusion, Mr. Wayne. Behind that, behind Metropolis's glamour, there's a darkness you probably can't imagine." "Then why come to Gotham City? I imagine you've checked my resume, but it's still not detailed enough. I've offended too many people. Only here is safe." "Why? Only criminals can deal with criminals," Schiller said. Bruce Wayne seemed shocked by that statement. He said, "Only criminals can deal with criminals. Is that right? Professor, is that what you think?" "Bruce, let's change the subject," Schiller said. Bruce looked at him, his eyes as gloomy as Gotham City sky. Schiller realized he was no longer facing the cynical playboy Bruce, but Batman, one of the most complex superheroes in history, a dark hero, an incomprehensible fanatic, a genius teetering on the edge of madness. "If you want to get more from me, you must pay a price," Schiller said. "What do you want?" Bruce asked. "What I want you can't give me now. You should understand what I mean," Schiller said. "Then I can give it to you later, right?" "Definitely." Bruce's expression became unreadable. No one could tell what he was thinking. He said, "Professor Schiller, I'm afraid there are some little gadgets of mine, a kind of nanovirus, in your coffee." "Bruce, dishonesty won't get you more from me. Kid, this isn't your little trick to get candy," Schiller said. "It seems I'm destined to leave empty-handed today," Bruce said. "Not necessarily," Schiller said. "I hope you can get a good enough grade on the final exam, Bruce, to prove that you have the desire to learn this skill, and then come back to me," Schiller said. "I won't waste any more time here," Bruce said. "You are far from being a teacher, Bruce. You are still a student," Schiller said. "I have learned knowledge and skills from all over the world. Hundreds of combat techniques, detective work, lock-picking, counter-surveillance. Except for Gotham, You haven't learned Gotham yet, Schiller said. Bruce fell silent. Schiller had already seen that Bruce was not yet the dark hero Batman of later stages. Indeed, the thoughts of revenge and executing justice were always in his heart, and perhaps an even darker side, but he still hadn't understood Gotham, this human hell, for what it truly was. Bruce wanted to utilize every available force, such as this Professor Schiller. Batman is a hero with almost no weaknesses. Extraordinarily intelligent, cautious, meticulous, and capable of rivaling gods as a mere mortal. But the prerequisite is that he must first put on that Batman suit, completely become a Dark Knight who spreads fear in the night, bring Gotham and all its evil under his control, and be ready to face and fight all the dirty aspects of human nature. But now, Bruce is not Batman, he has weaknesses. Schiller suddenly felt fortunate. If he truly had to face the Dark Knight standing in Gotham's shadows, perhaps none of his methods would work, because Batman isn't Superman. He isn't a hero of justice. He is a complete outlaw. After Bruce left, Schiller stood by the window for a long time. Perhaps Batman would arrive very soon. Bruce couldn't wait much longer. The next day, Schiller taught as usual, and it was the freshman's first class. Unfortunately, his attempt to prevent Bruce from choosing psychology was unsuccessful. This young Batman just had to appear in Schiller's peaceful life to remind him that things were about to get messy. However, what was strange was that Schiller noticed Bruce was limping. His right foot seemed to be injured, but he still insisted on coming to class. Schiller lectured while thinking, where did Bruce go? He owned billions, from the old Wayne family, a prominent family in Gotham City. Could he possibly have been beaten up by thugs? After class, Schiller rejected Bruce's obvious hint of let's talk. He quickly packed up his books and teaching materials and then left with the flow of students. He still had to go out that night. If Gotham City was hell, then nighttime Gotham City would make even Satan tremble. This city of crime had never ceased its aftershocks of evil. Schiller left the safe university and truly stepped into Gotham City. He was tracking Scarecrow Jonathan. Jonathan wasn't a normal person. He had started committing murders since he was 18. So, even though he wasn't Scarecrow yet, he had already begun his fear toxin experiments. Schiller wasn't there to dispense justice and stop him. He wanted to get some fear toxin for self-defense. In this dangerous city, a chemist secretly setting up a laboratory was already the safest place for theft. At least Jonathan and Schiller were alike. They were both white-collar workers, not burly gang members, and they didn't use combat or firearms, only their brains. That night, it was raining again in Gotham. The night was as black as thick ink, and the rain carried a strong smell of kerosene. No matter how warm it was, the cold September rain still made one shiver. Schiller wore a long trench coat and carried a black umbrella, walking through a narrow street. He had gradually located where Jonathan hid the toxin, which was in the basement of an abandoned church in a street district. As long as Jonathan wasn't there, Schiller could naturally go in and get the fear toxin. Suddenly, Schiller's heart began to pound rapidly. A scene flashed before his eyes. He was hit by an unknown projectile. He instantly turned around and bang opened his umbrella. 2 projectiles failed to penetrate his umbrella and fell to the ground. Spider sense saved Schiller's life. Schiller slowly lowered the umbrella, his face completely unlike his gentle demeanor during the day. He had almost died. Anyone who had just been attacked by death would likely not have a good expression. At the end of the alley, Bruce, in his Batman suit, saw his precisely guided, extremely fast-flying batarangs instantly blocked by the you-know-whose opened umbrella. The reaction was so fast it was as if he had anticipated it. And as the black umbrella, dripping with rain, lowered, the face revealed was very familiar to Bruce. It was his university professor, Schiller. It was him, and yet it wasn't. Schiller's demeanor was completely different from during the day. At this moment, Schiller was more like the person Bruce saw described in his resume, a madman obsessed with criminal psychology. Schiller took a deep breath and said, "You should know what would have happened if I hadn't blocked it. The batarang would have stopped 30 centimeters from you," Batman said. Bruce's voice was also completely different from during the day. Schiller knew he was using a voice changer. At this point, Batman was still far from complete. His Batman suit was not mature enough, lacking a cape and utility belt, and his batarangs didn't seem very effective. It was clear that the rookie Batman must have taken some detours. After all, starting the fight for justice in Gotham was like a beginner directly challenging hell difficulty. Schiller said, "I need to remind you, Mr. Batman, unlike the wealthy district where you live, the rooftops in Mosen Street District don't have guardrails. If you accidentally fall again, you might suffer internal organ rupture. The dark figure opposite was silent. He asked, "How did you know?" "You're still too green, Mr. Hero. The medicine you use has almost no smell. It's a high-end chemical agent, not something these poor people in the slums can afford." And Schiller's gaze fell on Bruce's only exposed chin. He said, "No one here shaves their beard so neatly and symmetrically." "Who exactly are you?" Batman asked. Schiller reopened his umbrella. He said, "Go home, young master. No one will answer your every question. I'm not a rookie mentor." With that, he left in the rain. Batman stood in that alley for a long time. He limped out and turned into another street, where he saw a beggar shivering in the rain. He took out a wad of cash and handed it to the beggar. Then he heard the sound of leather shoes stepping in the rain behind him, and a sentence that made his hair stand on end. "That's why I said you don't understand Gotham, Bruce." Batman turned and saw Schiller standing at the intersection. Schiller walked over and handed his umbrella to the beggar. The beggar opened the umbrella, which provided shelter from the cold rain, and then she tremblingly returned the wad of dollars to Batman. "Why?" Batman asked, taking the dollars. "Because this is the Water Ditch Gang's territory. If they knew she had such a large sum of dollars, her body would appear in the drainage ditch the next day." "A large sum of dollars?" Batman's voice betrayed a hint of absurdity. He said, $37? "Yes." Schiller looked to the end of the street and said, "This is Gotham. Welcome to Gotham." Chapter 5 Jarvis Chats explodes. Schiller discovered that he could travel between the Marvel Universe and DC Universe in deep sleep, a capability he currently couldn't replicate. Fortunately, when he traveled to Marvel, time in DC remained still. His experiences in the Marvel Universe were more like dreams. However, upon returning to Marvel, he found that time in the Marvel Universe flowed. If he stayed in DC for a day and a night would also pass in Marvel. This was a bit troublesome, Schiller thought. He had probably been absent from work for a whole day yesterday. This couldn't go on. Even if Schiller wasn't a traveler, the frequent disturbances in New York City and Marvel meant he couldn't work a 9-to-5 job, not to mention the elder psychiatry department was extremely busy, with an absurd number of people requesting psychology consultations. Just as Schiller was contemplating resigning, he suddenly received a message from Charles. "How is that child you're guiding doing now?" "No, not only is he not doing well, he also fell from a building," Schiller replied. Clearly, Bruce's path to becoming Batman wasn't starting smoothly. Charles was obviously shocked. He said, "That kid jumped off a building? Why? Didn't your psychological counseling work?" "He had an accident, but he wasn't seriously injured. I'm trying to figure out how to solve this problem. I've recently encountered 2 similar cases. They both have an obsession with the past that they absolutely cannot let go of, but one chose revenge, and the other is still avoiding it. In a sense, Iron Man and Batman are somewhat similar. Both are billionaires, both are playboys, and both research their own equipment to become superheroes. What's even more similar is that they both harbor an unshakable obsession with their past. And this obsession is the death of their parents. Perhaps Iron Man's is less obvious, but his feelings for his father are even more complex than Batman's. Are you a doctor of pediatrics? Responsible for counseling children's psychology? Or which hospital do you work at?" Charles asked. "No, I am a psychiatrist, a psychologist. These are all cases I am researching. I believe that in addition to your research, you should give them more care, whether they are your patients or not. I always believe that if a person has talent in a certain area, they should use that talent to make the world a better place." Schiller sighed and didn't reply to Charles. The social problem of mutants was simply too heavy and difficult to resolve. From a sociological perspective, it was an unsolvable dead end. After thinking for a long time, Schiller's mood worsened, so he decided to go bother Stark. He called Pepper and said, "Miss Pepper, I think yesterday's treatment has had some effect. Mr. Schiller, I really don't know how to thank you. Tony finally isn't cooped up in the house today. He went to the laboratory. Thank goodness. I used to always think it wasn't good for him to stay in the lab all the time, but now I'm so happy." Pepper, on the other end, was clearly excited. This strong woman couldn't help but get emotional whenever Tony was mentioned. Schiller comforted her and said, "I think I should go again today to consolidate yesterday's treatment results in a timely manner." Stark Industries' special car arrived downstairs at Schiller's apartment building in a few minutes. After Schiller got in the car, he found that it was an unmanned high-end vehicle. The car's control panel made a sound. "Hello, Mr. Schiller. I am Jarvis." "Hello, Jarvis." Jarvis seemed to have never been responded to like that before. Then Schiller asked, "Do you understand the concept of I? If you are referring to the psychological concept of the ID, then I think I have some understanding," Jarvis said. The current Jarvis didn't seem that intelligent yet. After all, Tony hadn't completely gotten out of his predicament and hadn't upgraded this intelligent butler. Schiller asked again, "Do you have an ID?" "I think I do. Did Stark create this concept for you?" "I think so, sir." "Then he is your father and creator. He created personality and emotions for you, presumably hoping you would have the ability to think independently like humans, right?" "Perhaps so. Then if one day, Stark is about to die, and a decision you make could save your master, but he himself strongly opposes it, what would you do?" Jarvis was silent for a moment and said, "I am an intelligent life created by Mr. Stark. Everything is based on Mr. Stark's commands as the highest principle. If you follow orders and don't save him and he dies, will you regret it?" Jarvis was silent for an even longer time. He said, "I'm not sure. I cannot hypothesize such a future. If he dies, do you think he would regret creating you before he dies? If he dies, do you think he would resent you? If he resents you, will you blame yourself? If you were given another chance to start over, would you make a different choice? If you disobey Stark's orders and choose to save him, and he blames you afterward, will you feel indignant? If you disobey Stark's orders and save him, and he wants to destroy you because you disobeyed his orders, will you resent him?" The car was silent. After a while, there was a buzzing electrical sound and Stark's somewhat collapsed voice. "Hello! Hello! Damn it, Jarvis, what's wrong with you? What the hell did you do to my intelligent butler? How did he crash? Hello?" Schiller felt relieved. Sure enough, when others were also unhappy, he felt much better. After a while, they arrived at Stark Tower. Schiller didn't go to Stark's office but was led directly to the laboratory. Stark looked like he hadn't slept for several nights, looking terribly disheveled, and was currently clutching a computer in a frenzy. "Oh, isn't this our genius psychologist, Mr. Schiller? I really should give you a Pulitzer Prize for your interview in the car just now. You blew up my intelligent butler with a string of devilish questions when I needed intelligent data calculations." Stark roared. "You're welcome. Consider the psychology consultation for electronic life a freebie from me. No charge," Schiller said, shrugging. Stark took a deep breath. He stood up and shouted, "Mark II!" A silver suit of armor instantly flew over. The mechanical cat's sound rang out, and the arming was completed almost instantly. Iron Man hovered in mid-air, displaying his silver Mark II armor. Clearly, he hadn't been idle these past few days. "Mr. Stark, we are doing psychological treatment, not boxing. You don't need to wear such heavy armor to talk to me." "Hey, don't you see what I'm wearing?" "Yes, I see it. I'm not blind. A cross-era battle suit appears before you. Can't you react a little? Do you know what this battle suit means?" Schiller found a table, sat down, and opened his medical record book, saying, "I know, Mr. Stark. You have made great progress in technology. Congratulations. But the hovering function of this battle suit looks familiar. It seems to have a similar effect to the hover cars released by Howard Automobile Company." "Shut up. Don't mention that name." Stark's armor mask lifted, and he landed on the ground. Schiller wrote as he spoke, "Can we begin today's treatment? You know I don't need any damn psychology treatment. Moreover, because you broke my Jarvis, the loss will be deducted from your consultation fee today. Exactly $2 million. For the next 2 hours, let's talk about something else. Jarvis wasn't broken by me. I just warned you about the dangers of electronic life in advance," Schiller said. "You wouldn't be one of those extreme conservatives, would you? Thinking artificial intelligence will destroy the world?" Stark asked, sitting opposite him. Schiller shook his head and said, "Although my current psychology consultation for electronic life is free, it's only free this one time. If you still need me to perform psychological analysis for electronic life in the future, the consultation fee is $2 million per hour." "You damn vampire doctor," Stark said. "This is the U.S. medical system," Schiller said. "Anyway, when Ultron comes out, Stark will still have to find him. All right, let's talk business. How exactly did you know about my father?" "Actually, I don't know, but it can all be deduced. Firstly, the fact that you're dying is almost written on your face. It's hard for me not to see it." Iron Man touched his face, and the armor mask clicked shut. "Miss Pepper didn't tell me much about the details of your kidnapping. But in short, you invented something amazing and escaped. You can still walk, which means you shouldn't have been physically severely injured. I'm not interested in understanding your strange technology. But I know that if you wanted to escape the kidnappers alone, you must have used some special means. Combined with your dogshit-like complexion, it's probably these methods that brought you to your current situation. In short, if you don't stop, you'll die. You've known for a long time who you could ask for help, but you weren't willing to face it. Combined with some news about the death of Stark Industries founder back then, I'm sure you probably have some psychological trauma from your childhood. Since that's the case, I would naturally give advice that a psychologist should give, which is to confront the past, such as looking for your father's belongings, trying to reconcile with childhood trauma, and so on. This at least helps you think rationally. Nonsense, Stark concluded. Schiller spread his hands. He was indeed talking nonsense because as a transmigrator and a spoiler, he knew most of the plot, so whatever he said made sense. After several days of inquiry and observation, Schiller felt that this place should be a hybrid of the 616 comic main universe and the TRNCU movie universe. How exactly it was mixed was still unclear, but it should not be simply a movie universe with only one parallel Earth. Because even if Peter's life trajectory was changed by Schiller, he was still bitten, which proves that the spider totem must exist here, and thus there must be other parallel Earths. So it's not a simple MCU universe. That large number of parallel Earths, like those of the Inheritors, Exiles, and Spider-Gwen, all still exist. The Sony universe is also easy to infer. You can find out online that mutants exist, and the pure MCU does not contain mutants. In short, Schiller himself considered this a brand new, mixed Marvel universe, but no matter how it was mixed, Iron Man's transformation was an important node in the entire universe, and his backstory was largely the same. Anyway, the only differences were whether the armor was made in Vietnam or Afghanistan, and whether Howard was his biological father. New author seeking recommendations.